We're going to start out by creating a new project. We're going to create a project from the project template command line app, and we're going to call this project interface example. So for this project here, we're going to start out by creating a new class, and we're going to call that class person. And we're going to keep this class very simple. So we're going to have one attribute, private int age, and we're going to have one attribute, private string name. We're going to give it a constructor that takes as an argument an int to describe the age and a string to describe the name. And we're going to use those values to assign a value to our attributes. Very standard so far. So we're going to learn how to make an interface, and for that matter we're going to start out by creating a new Java class, and here we're going to select interface, and in the interface name we're going to write printable. Our interface printable we're going to provide with a single method. That single method is going to be print, so I'm going to write here public void print. And now what we would like to do is we want to implement this interface in our person class. The way that we do that in Java is by writing the implements keyword. And of course, once we do this, since printable contains a single abstract method, we're going to be forced to override that method as we're in a concrete class. Our class is not abstract, so we have to implement all abstract methods. We're going to use the helper tool here to implement the methods, and here we can select the methods that we want to implement and choose, of course, that we would like to have the override annotation. And then in here what we're going to do is we're going to write system out println, and we're going to print the name plus a space, and then we're going to write the age. Very simple method. So now what we would expect from classes implementing the printable interface is that we're able to print them. So we can now go into our main method, and in our main method we can create a new person object. And we're going to give it some arbitrary info here. So it was the age first. We'll start off by giving it an age of 25 and then a name of John Doe. And now of course we're able to call the print method and execute our program to see that we are now able to print the person object, John Doe 25. Of course, since we are now implementing the interface, and since an interface can be used as a type on our variables as well, what we're able to do is also we're able to write printable as a type for our object P, and then still engage the print method on that object. Of course, we're able to use the printable type for any class that implements the printable interface. So with that done, we're going to demonstrate one of the neat things about interfaces. So one of the things differentiating interfaces from abstract classes is that we can have multiple interfaces implemented by the same class, whereas we can only inherit or extend a single other class. So this means that I could choose to here say that the person objects must also be comparable. And this is a generic type, so we need to specify here that it's a comparable person object. And this forces us to implement the compare_to method. What we're going to do here is we are going to implement a way to compare two person objects with each other. And the way that I'm implementing it, we are comparing these person objects based on their age. The rule is that we need to return a positive integer in cases where the object that we are in is larger than the object that we are comparing with, which is passed through the method call here. And it needs to be negative if the object that we're in is less than the object that we're comparing with, and it needs to be equals in instances where we have, or equal, it needs to be 0 in cases where the two objects are equal to each other. This is relatively easy to achieve, so we can just write this dot h minus o dot h. This way, we will return a positive integer when the h in the object that we're in is larger than the h of the object that we're comparing with, and vice versa. And of course, it's going to be 0 in cases where the h is the same on both of these. Now we've seen that we can implement multiple interfaces on the same class, and then finally we're going to demonstrate the use of the comparable interface. The comparable interface enables built-in Java classes to know that the objects that we are dealing with are comparable, and this means that we're able to use, so I'm just going to change the type up here, some pretty neat techniques inside of Java. So I'm going to make a few other person objects here, and I'm going to be sure to give them some different ages. Oops. Like this, and actually I think that we will do, well, actually that doesn't matter too much. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a new array list, and call it persons, actually, like this. And then we're going to add our person objects to this person array list. And the rule with ArrayList is that the order of the objects will be the same as the order that we added them in. So I'm going to start out by adding P2. Then I'm going to add P1. And then I'm going to add the last one here, P. Sorry. Now we can print out the contents of this list by doing like this. Now, in order to get a meaningful output here, we need to do a little trick. So in here, we're going to override the public void toString method that we have inherited from the object class. Wait, sorry, of course, that's a string return time. And we are going to return the name plus the age in a meaningful manner, like so. This means that each time we want a textual representation of the person object, it'll call this method and give us a meaningful output. So now if we run this program, what we're going to see is we will see that the content of our array list is on first place. We have, or in index 0, we have Grandpa Doe at 78, we have Baby Doe at 3, and John Doe at 25. So now what we can do is we can make use of a built-in class called collections that has a method called sort, and we can use that on a list. So that is any class that implements the list interface. Array list implements the list interface. We can actually see that by removing array list here and using list as a type on our left side. And then down here we can see what are the changes made after we called sort, because what's going to happen is that sort is going to make use of the compare2 method in our person class and use that to rank our person objects against each other. So let's see how that spans out. So as we see here, we see that the array list is completely reorganized. Now we have the smallest age first and the largest age on the last index of our array list. So here was a little introduction to the interface.